All right, let me walk you through this. Number 10. Correspondence materials. You're sitting on a steel bunk in a cell 6 feet wide and 9 feet long. There's a slot in the door about the size of a shoebox opening. Everything that enters or leaves passes through it. Your food tray, your mail, your world. Guards and inmates call it the bean chute. Right now you've got a golf pencil in your hand. No eraser, no metal tip, just a stub and a sheet of lined notebook paper. This is how you stay connected to everyone you know. Writing materials are allowed on every death row in the country without exception. The details vary. Texas uses golf pencils, short, no removable parts. Some states allow felt-tip pens. You buy paper through commissary in small amounts each purchase cycle. Stamps come out of your prison account. If you have no money, the state gives you enough for 1 or 2 letters a week. That's the legal floor, and some facilities don't go beyond it. The official version says, correspondence preserves family ties and supports mental health during incarceration. That's true as far as it goes. But here's what actually happens. All your outgoing personal mail gets read by staff before it leaves. All incoming mail gets opened and inspected. In Texas and several other states, every personal letter you receive gets photocopied. You get the copy. The original, the one your mother held while she wrote it, the one with whatever trace of her hands is still on the paper, goes into a file or gets thrown away. You receive a reproduction. That policy started after guards found drugs soaked into paper sent from outside. It has been standard practice for years. Some men on the row have been there 15, 20 years. The average time between sentencing and execution in the United States is now over 15 years. In that time, some of these men have built correspondence with dozens of people, family, advocates, journalists, strangers who wrote first. The cell fills with paper. Legal filings alone can take over a corner of the space. Some have written full memoirs in longhand, 1 page at a time, passed out through the same slot. Everything else goes through. In Texas today, every personal letter a condemned inmate receives arrives as a photocopy. The handwriting is real. The paper she touched never makes it through. What you can send out tells one story. What you're allowed to read and where it has to come from is a different one entirely. Number 9. Books, magazines, and newspapers. You're 4 years in. The man 3 cells down passed a worn paperback through the bean chute this morning. The spine is cracked. Pages 140 through 145 are dog-eared by someone you've never met. You'll read it in 2 days and pass it on. By the time it reaches the end of the row, half a dozen men will have read it. None of them paid for it. That's the closest thing to a library that exists here. Reading is allowed on every death row in the country. Here's what most families find out the hard way. You cannot mail a book to your relative on death row. Not from home. Not a used copy. Not a book off your own shelf. It has to come directly from a publisher or an approved bookseller, shipped straight to the facility. The rule came in after contraband started showing up in bindings and covers, drugs embedded in pages. The result is that the $1 used paperback is not allowed. The retail price new copy from an approved vendor is. For inmates without money, the only option is the facility library cart, which comes maybe once a week with a limited selection. Genre fiction moves through the row like water. Thrillers, westerns, urban fiction. A popular title circulates through a unit over weeks. Religious texts move separately, outside the cart system. And true crime is one of the most widely read genres on death row. Books about wrongful convictions, books about executions. Men waiting on their own appeals read accounts of men who waited on theirs. Multiple reporters who have corresponded with Texas death row inmates have noted it. It is not rare. A man in a 6x9 cell reads about another man in a 6x9 cell and looks for the differences. Today, in most state death row systems, a family member cannot hand a book to their relative. It has to be ordered new. Reading is the most common active daytime activity on death row. Most choose fiction and religious texts. A smaller group reads law, and what that access actually looks like is not what the official version describes. Number 8. Legal materials and law access. 8 years in, your post-conviction attorney handles 12 other cases. You've read your trial transcript twice and found issues your attorney hasn't raised. The legal cart came Tuesday with 3 books you can keep for a week. Your notes are on a legal pad. The filings are stacked in a corner that keeps getting smaller. Access to legal materials is guaranteed by law to everyone in American custody, including the condemned. In practice, most facilities run a cart system. Law books, case reporters, practice guides rolled by on a schedule once or twice a week. If you need something specific, you fill out a request form and wait. Some facilities now have computer terminals with legal databases. Some still run the same paging system they used in the 1980s. Here's what that adds up to in real terms. You are building your appeal, fighting for your life, using a cart that visits twice a week and a 72-hour request turnaround. The office that prosecuted you has a full staff and full database access. That gap is not a flaw. It is the system. But some men learn the law for real, not as a hobby. Because the personal stakes are absolute and there is nothing but time. Guards on long-running death rows describe inmates who can read a capital filing the way a mechanic reads an engine, methodically, looking for the thing that is wrong. Some have filed their own appeals without attorneys and won stays of execution. That is on record. A case that is run through multiple rounds of appeal generates thousands of pages. The cell is small. At some point, the legal files start competing with the bed for space. Once the filings are put away for the day, something else takes over. It runs from morning to lights out, costs more than it should, and almost everyone on the row has it. Number 7. Commissary food and hygiene items. Wednesday is commissary day on most Texas death row units. You submitted your order form 4 days ago. The cart comes to the door. The officer slides items through the bean chute one by one. Ramen noodles, instant coffee, peanut butter, chips, hot sauce. A stick of deodorant you actually want instead of what the state provides. This is one of the structuring events of the week. The approach of commissary day changes the mood of the unit. Every death row runs some version of a commissary. The items vary by state, but the basics are consistent. Instant food, hygiene items above the state minimum, small things that make a difference. In southern facilities where heat is a real problem, personal fans are on the list. Everything is sold above retail. The vendor relationship is typically a monopoly. There is no other authorized seller. What that looks like in the cell. An inmate whose family deposits $50 or $100 a month eats ramen, has real coffee, has a fan running in summer. An inmate with no outside support gets the state indigent pack, a toothbrush, a bar of soap, a stub of toothpaste, maybe one stamped envelope. Nothing more. They share the same sentence, the same cell dimensions, possibly the same execution date. About 1 in 5 men on death row has no regular money coming from outside. The daily texture of their lives diverges from week 1. The universal commissary meal is called spread. Ramen as the base, mixed with whatever else is in the cell. Chips, peanut butter, hot sauce saved from a tray. Hot water comes from the tap if it runs warm enough. That is the meal. That has been the meal for decades on every death row in the country. Money in the account can buy food and a fan. The most important item in most cells doesn't cost anything to look at. It is on the wall above the bed. Number 6. Personal photographs. You walk into a cell that has been occupied for 12 years. The first thing you look at isn't the television. It's the wall above the bunk. There are photographs fastened in the approved area, 20, 30 of them. Children, mostly. A woman, an older man. The photos are arranged, not random. On the left side, a girl is a toddler. On the right, she looks about 13. 12 years of a child's life, visible in sequence on a cell wall. Photographs are allowed in every jurisdiction with limits. Typically 25 to 50 photos, 4 by 6 inches or smaller, no Polaroids. Photos arrive through the mail system and get inspected like everything else. When an inmate moves cells, every photo comes down and gets reapproved at the new location. The wall above the bunk is the most personal space in the facility. Everything else in the cell is available to the institution. They can read your mail, track your commissary orders, see what you watch. The photographs are yours. That is the closest thing to privacy a cell allows. That gets to you if you've spent any time around it. For some men, the photographs are of people who stopped writing years ago. The relationship ended, the family moved on. But the photo is still on the wall because taking it down would mean something the inmate isn't ready to mean. A frozen record of something that isn't there anymore, kept because the alternative is harder. When an inmate is executed and no one claims the personal property, the photographs go into a claim window, about 30 to 60 days. If no one requests them, they get destroyed. Chaplains who have worked executions describe the act of collecting the photos from the cell afterward as one of the harder parts of the job. The photographs are the most intimate items in the cell. The most expensive item sits across from them. Bought, not given. And running almost constantly. Number 5. Television? It's 2 a.m. An officer doing welfare checks walks the row. Cell after cell after cell, every one dark except for a small screen glowing at low volume. Infomercials on one, overnight news on the next, an old movie after that. The whole row in a kind of shared dim light. Nobody is necessarily watching, that's not the point. A personal television is allowed on most active death rows in the country. The standard is 13 inches, measured diagonally. It has to be purchased new from the approved vendor. The vendor is contracted through the state, and the prices are above retail. A 13-inch set through a prison vendor might run $100 to $150 or more. The identical model sells for less anywhere else. There is no other authorized seller. A cable system runs through the facility, and the channels are the same ones anyone in the country can watch. The television runs almost continuously in most cells, not because inmates are watching it, because silence is harder. That's the real function, not entertainment noise. Overnight news, court TV, sports, daytime talk. The content matters less than the fact that something is on. Now listen. In Texas, executions happen frequently enough that a condemned man watching the evening news has a real chance of seeing coverage of another condemned man being taken to the chamber. Someone from the same unit, someone whose first name he knows. And then the coverage of the execution itself later that same night, on the same television. Between 70 and 80% of death row inmates in states where television is allowed have one. Most keep it on from wake up to lights out. The most watched content is sports, news, and whatever's running overnight. In Texas today, a man on death row with $150 in his account watches the same cable news, the same sports, and the same late shows as anyone else in the country. The television gets you the world's noise. A newer device does something the TV never could. It lets you write back. Number 4. Electronic tablets. Since around 2015, most state prison systems have started rolling out restricted tablets to their population, including death row. The device is a limited tablet with no internet access, no browser, no social media. What it has: an email system, a music store, e-books, and games. The tablet costs $70 to $100 through the approved vendor. The same company that sells the tablet runs the email system. There is no other option. In Texas, contact visits between death row inmates and their families were cut off in 1999, following a breakout attempt. Every conversation with family since then has happened through glass, through paper, or through a screen. For those men, the tablet became the closest thing to direct contact available. Here's how the fee structure actually works. Every message costs money. A single email runs about 30 to 50 cents for the sender. The recipient is often charged too. One song in the music store might cost $1.50 or $2. A family that emails their relative on death row regularly can spend $30 to $60 a month just to stay in contact. That money goes to a private company under a state contract. The family has no alternative vendor, no alternative system. Let me tell you what that actually means on the ground. Before the tablet, a letter took days or weeks each way. With the tablet, a man on death row can email his daughter in the morning and read her reply by evening. For men with children, that has been described as one of the most significant changes in years. The contact is real. The connection is real. And a private company collects a fee on every one of them. The music on the tablet is different from the television. You choose the song. You hear it through your own earbuds, in your own head. Men with long-running music libraries describe specific songs as anchors. Things they go to at night after the television goes off, tied to specific years and specific people. In states where this system is active today, a family pays a fee every single time they send a message to someone on death row. The tablet holds music downloaded for a price, but before the tablet existed and still running alongside it in most cells, there was something older. Something that doesn't charge per song, doesn't require an account, and means something different. Number 3, radio and music player. Before the tablet existed, there was the radio. In a lot of cells, both are still running. An AM/FM set tuned to whatever's broadcasting near the Polunsky unit in Livingston, Texas. Country, gospel, AM talk, sports on Sunday. The radio doesn't charge per song. It doesn't require an account. It just broadcasts. Personal radios have been allowed on death rows across the country for decades, purchased through the approved vendor above retail. In Texas, a separate MP3 player from the same company that runs the tablet system became the standard personal music device through the 2000s. Music is purchased and downloaded song by song through the account system. You build the library over time. The difference between radio and television is real. The television runs as background noise, always on, always in the room, functionally shared with everyone on the row doing the same thing. Music is different. It's the one thing in the cell that feels entirely chosen. An inmate who has been on the row for 10 years has a library that reflects who he was when he arrived, what he's gone through since, and what he keeps coming back to. Some of it is gospel, some is country, some is whatever was playing the last night he was free. There is one account from Texas the people in this work remember. A condemned man asked for a specific song to be played during his final moments in the execution chamber. The warden denied the request, against protocol. The chaplain present, the state employee standing beside the condemned man in his last minutes, sang the song himself, in the chamber, by himself. That is on record. Music is the only permitted item that has ever been specifically requested for the moment of execution. Not food, not a photograph, a song. Today on Texas death row, a condemned man can fall asleep to a song he bought because it reminds him of someone outside. That's within the rules. That's entirely his. What comes next is not something most people choose on the way in. It's something most of them find somewhere in the middle of the wait, without planning to. Number 2, religious items and texts. First week on the row. The cell is bare except for what you came in with. Within a few days, almost without exception, the new arrival asks for a Bible. Not because they identified as religious on their intake form. Most didn't. They ask because the chaplain is there, because the Bible is available, and because something about the cell at night makes you reach for it. Chaplains who have worked death rows for 20 and 30 years report this without variation. Every few weeks, a new man arrives and asks for a Bible. Religious items are protected by law in every American jurisdiction. In the cell, that means the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, or another text of a recognized faith. Prayer beads, a small cross or medal on a cord. A prayer rug of approved dimensions. Multiple texts at once. A state-employed chaplain is assigned to the unit and available to every inmate, whatever their faith. About 80% of men on death row identify as religious or spiritual. That number is higher than their rated intake and higher than the general population. The gap is large enough that everyone who has worked in these facilities for decades has seen it. Something about waiting for a known death under indefinite conditions deepens faith, or creates it where it wasn't before. The prayer beads are handled during prayer and during stress. The Bible is the most annotated book in the cell. Pages folded back, passages underlined, a single text worked over for years. Here's the part that doesn't get talked about much. The chaplain who visits a condemned man every week for a decade, who knows his case and his fears and the names of his children, is also the person who stands beside him in the execution chamber at the end. The same person. On the state payroll. The institution carrying out the execution employs the person providing comfort at the moment it happens. That is not a contradiction in the system. It is a feature of it. Today, state-employed chaplains walk death rows as part of their regular schedule, visiting men they will one day accompany to the chamber. Religious practice is one of the most private things happening in a death row cell. The rarest item on this list is also the most outward. The only one that produces something that exists after the person who made it is gone. Number 1, hobby and art supplies. You're in a small gallery. The work on the walls is pencil portraits drawn on lined notebook paper. The subjects are mostly children. One is a landscape, probably reconstructed from memory because there is no view to draw from the cell. The artist isn't here. He's in a cell in California where he has been for over 20 years. California holds more than 700 people on death row and has not carried out a single execution since 2006. Many of those men have been there long enough to build a body of work. Some of it is in galleries, some is in private collections. The artist sees none of the money. Art supplies are allowed on some death rows and heavily restricted on others. California has historically permitted broader access, including structured programs and real materials. Texas at the Polunsky unit is among the most restrictive. Paper and golf pencils through the standard correspondence allotment and not much else. The difference reflects a real philosophical split. Some states treat creative work as part of what incarceration can do for a person. Others consider the condemned beyond that conversation. Where supplies are available, they come through commissary above retail. A basic drawing set, a small watercolor kit. The work has a secondary market. Pieces have been sold, exhibited, and collected. Work by men who were later executed has sold specifically because the artist was executed. The death functions as a kind of authentication. In most cases, the inmate saw nothing from the transaction. A family member sold it. An advocate passed it on. The inmate heard about it secondhand through a letter passed through the bean chute. What inmates who draw say about it in their own words is consistent. It is the one activity in the cell where time stops feeling like waiting. Drawing a face from memory, a child, a parent, requires producing something rather than consuming something. You are making a mark. In a cell where almost nothing else gets made, that distinction matters. Adoption is the lowest of any item on this list, maybe 15 to 25% in states where it's allowed, but among those who engage, the practice is daily and serious. Almost everyone starts with portraits. Almost everyone starts with someone they know. Today in California, men who have been on death row for 2 decades under a moratorium that has suspended all executions continue to produce work that circulates in the world outside their cells. Some of them may never face an execution date. The drawings keep moving through the bean chute anyway. Here's the pattern, if you've been watching for it. The items at the low end of this list, television, ramen, stamps, are about managing time, filling the cell, keeping the silence from becoming the only thing. They are buffer. Most men use them. Most men need them. The items at the top, art, Music as a deliberate practice, religious faith deepened over years, are about something else. They are about producing rather than consuming. Leaving a mark. Being something specific even when the sentence is designed to reduce you to a number and a date. The drawing pencil and the Bible do the same work in different registers. Both are assertions of identity that the system didn't plan for. The second pattern is extraction. Every item on this list has been structured as a revenue mechanism at some level. The television costs more than retail. The tablet charges per message. The commissary marks up the ramen. The art sells without the artist's profit. The stamp allowance for indigent inmates is set at the legal minimum, not at the level needed for real contact. A private company collects a fee from a family every time they write to someone on death row. The system that permits these items has, in almost every case, also built in a way to collect money from the people using them and from the families on the outside. The third pattern is the gap between the official version and what actually happens. Official. Correspondence supports family ties. Real. The letter your mother wrote arrives as a photocopy. Official. Reading supports mental health and rehabilitation. Real. The library cart comes once a week. Official. Legal access is guaranteed. Real. The cart and the 72-hour paging system are the guarantee, and in some facilities they've been the guarantee since the 1980s. The fourth pattern is geography. Texas, no contact visits since 1999, tight supply rules, frequent executions. California, 700 people, no execution since 2006, broader program access, work circulating in galleries. Same sentence, different world. The conditions you wait in are not a function of what you did. They are a function of which state's jury convicted you. What all of it adds up to when you sit with it long enough. Stripped down to an approved list, people reveal the same hierarchy every time. Buffer against silence first, connection to other people second, meaning and legacy last. The television buffers, the photographs connect, the Bible and the drawing pencil mean. That's what the system produces when it takes everything else away. Right now, about 200 to 100 people in the United States are living in cells smaller than most parking spaces, with a legally approved list on the wall and a date they don't know yet. The average wait between sentencing and execution is over 15 years. In that time, a man watches his children grow up in photographs on a wall he can cross in 3 steps. He develops a faith he didn't have at intake. He wears through multiple purchased televisions, builds a music library on a device that charges per song, and stacks legal filings in a corner that keeps shrinking. Some produce artwork that outlives them. Some die still waiting for a date. Every item in that cell was chosen. The choosing, over years, is what almost no one on the outside talks about when they talk about death row. You made it through all 10. Most people don't. They click away at 5 or 6 and move on. You stayed. If something here changed the way you see what happens behind those walls, that's the comment. Tell me which one stayed with you, and if you haven't subscribed, now's the time. In a cell somewhere in Texas right now, a man is watching overnight news on a 13-inch screen. The fan he paid above retail for is running in the corner. On the wall above the bunk, there are photographs of a child who is now 13 years older than the first photo on the left. He didn't choose any of the circumstances, but he chose what to put on that wall. He chose what to listen to at night. He chose what to draw. That's all you get in there, a list of what's allowed, and the choices you make inside it.